Welcome back to Ozark Garage. Today we're talking about motorcycle navigation, specifically off-road or adventure motorcycle navigation, and why I've made the switch from using a cell phone to a dedicated GPS. So this is my DRZ400, and for on and off-road navigation for past couple years, I've used a phone, which is pretty common to use today with a smartphone, but I've recently made the switch to a dedicated GPS unit. And so what I've got here is a Garmin Montana 680. So let me explain why I made the switch, and then I'll show you how I made this mount for my DRZ400. So in this day and age, phone apps are really good for navigation. A couple downsides of using your phone. Number one, phone will use a lot of battery if the app is alive and the screen is on, which means if you're gonna have that up all the time, you're gonna have it plugged in. The charging port on phones are not very durable when it comes to off-road use, so they pop out or they break, whereas this Garmin Montana has a dedicated cradle that charges directly to the unit through some contacts on the base. So this is very durable. Don't have to worry about this coming unplugged. If it does have batteries inside, so it can be a standalone unit. And if I decide to walk away from the motorcycle and go for a hike, I can take it with me. Another thing about using your phone, you probably have, your phone number on here, probably some personal data. This is not something I'm comfortable having out on the bike with the screen unlocked especially, so even if it, something happens to it, it gets broken, stolen, whatever, this is not something I want out on the bike anymore. So this Garmin Montana cost me $200 shipped on eBay. It's got some free maps on it that I downloaded. Doesn't have any of my personal information, any of my data. GPS gets broken or stolen, I'm not going to be out anything. So a lot of people will say, well, just use your old phone. Use an old phone, go find an old cheap phone and use that. The problem with that is you still have to have some kind of email address and payment form a lot of times to use any of the apps. So it takes a lot of work to have a phone in that way, and it's just simpler to have a GPS. Now that said, I am a fan of dedicated GPSs. So with that in mind, let me show you how I mounted this Montana 680 onto the handlebars of my DRZ400. So while yes, I could just mount this on the ram mount, wire it in and go, I don't really want to do that because it kind of sticks up high. I want to put it, right here over the handlebar clamps. All right, so right now I am going to mark so I can get them back in position after I remove the handlebar caps here. So here's the plan. Here's the top clamp for the handlebars that holds the Scott steering damper. And I want to put the GPS in its mount, more or less here, so hovering over the top of it. The GPS mount has what's called an amps pattern here. It's a rectangular 4-bolt universal pattern. So even if I upgrade units later on to a different style cradle, it should still work on my mount here. So my handlebar clamp here is about 2 1/8 wide. So we're going to cut piece of aluminum here, 2 1/8 inch from the edge here, and it needs to be 8.5 inches long total. This is 9 inches, so we'll just go ahead and make a straight cut off the edge here. So this is one of my favorite tools. It is a Chicago Electric sheet metal nibbler from Harbor Freight, and I really like it for cutting stuff like this because I can cut this piece off and both sides of it are still good. It's not like a pair of hand shears where you have to curl one side up or down to get the chunk you want off of it. So this curled piece here is all the waste there is. Both sides are still usable for anything. Now I want my GPS to sit in the landscape orientation so it doesn't block my gauges, so it'll sit more or less like that. And this amp bolt pattern looks to be 1.5 inches by 1 3/16 inches. I'm gonna guess it's probably an actual, it's probably a metric, if we're being honest here. All right, so there's our drill pattern for the amps. And now I want this top piece to be 3 inches. So that's going to be, these are going to be bend lines here. 2 inches from each one of those because I want it 2 inches tall. And these will also be bend lines, but these will have to go the other direction. We're going to have to transfer these to the other side. So here's our GPS mounting pattern. These are going to be our top bends, and then these are going to be our flange bends. and we will mark and drill these after we get this bent, just in case we're a little bit off. So this is my 18-inch Grizzly sheet metal brake. This is going to give us a very nice crisp bend on our piece of metal here. That. Pop that loose. That gives us a nice crisp 90. We're going to do the same thing on this side here. Like that. And now comes the challenging part, because you can see our wings are a little bit too long to fit in here. So I got to stretch it a little bit. And that's one of the challenges with a brake like this, is you have to plan your bends and make sure you can get them where they need to go, like this. Sometimes you got to tweak the material a little bit, but you need like that. And then this side here, though, after we've bent that, is going to be a lot easier, because that side's now closer. So, there we go. We have us a mount. All right, so back over here at the workbench, I'm just going to do a quick test fit. Make sure bolt holes line up relatively well, and this will clear our Scott steering damper, which looks like our screws are a little bit too long, but we can cut those off pretty easily or get some shorter ones. So the mount's a little bit long, which is fine. We can trim that off, but now we need to transfer and drill the holes for the top clamp into the mount. So it looks like they are 3 3/4, probably a metric measurement again. All right, so here's the first real test fit. As you can see, I don't have the bolts tightened. They're just kind of sitting there. So I've got some clearance between the mount and my steering stabilizer. I probably could have lowered it maybe a 1/4 inch. So here's kind of a view from sitting on the bike, if you will. GPS is pretty easy to see, doesn't block any gauges or indicators, the ignition or anything. So I think I'm gonna take it off of here. I'm probably going to sandblast it just so it cleans up the mount a little bit, gives it a nice matte finish, and then we just got to wire it. Okay, so the wiring for the GPS mount comes out of the bottom of the cradle, and I run it underneath my factory gauge pod here, and I have it tied into my USB power outlet here that I installed off to the side with a switch relocation. And if you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's the same one where I installed the Scott steering damper. But this is already a fused 12-volt power supply, so it makes sense to power my GPS off of that also, just for simplicity. But now when I turn the key on, now the key's on, the GPS turns on, and then if I turn the key off, it'll give me a little prompt. I'll go ahead and turn it off here. So another thing I can do is there's a little security screw here, and by tightening the security screw, it basically locks this to the cradle, and then it's much harder to steal. So the Garmin Montana and the mount I built both work great. Another thing I forgot to mention is dedicated GPSs are typically a lot easier to see and read in the bright sunlight than your phone. So anyway, if you don't want to spend $700 on a brand new Garmin Zumo, an older GPS from eBay may be the right answer for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.